Hidden deep within the desert cliffs of southern Jordan lies one of the greatest architectural mysteries of the ancient world, Petra, a city literally carved into the living rock. Picture this, a sprawling metropolis of temples, tombs, and theaters, all chiseled with breathtaking precision from rose-colored sandstone over 2,000 years ago. But here's what really makes Petra baffling. How did the Nabataeans, a nomadic tribe turned master builders, transform this barren landscape into a thriving hub of trade and culture? Why would anyone choose to build their capital in the middle of such unforgiving terrain? The answers lie in their astonishing ingenuity, ancient water systems that defied the desert, hidden trade routes that brought unimaginable wealth, and architectural techniques so advanced they still leave engineers speechless today. This is more than just a lost city, it's a testament to human resilience and creativity. Stick with us as we peel back the layers of history to reveal how Petra became one of the most extraordinary wonders of the ancient world, and why its secrets continue to captivate archaeologists and adventurers alike. By the end of this journey, you'll see these iconic ruins in a whole new light, not just as stunning relics of the past, but as clues to understanding an entire civilization that refused to be limited by the world around them. Long before the towering facades of Petra were etched into the cliffs, the Nabataeans were masters of survival in the harshest conditions, not with grand monuments, but with something far more valuable: knowledge. These weren't just wandering desert traders, they were the original entrepreneurs of the ancient world, turning barren landscapes into highways of commerce. Imagine a humble nomadic tribe transforming into the gatekeepers of luxury goods like frankincense and myrrh, precious resins worth more than gold to the empires of Egypt, Greece, and Rome. They didn't conquer with armies, they dominated through trade, quietly building a network that stretched from Arabia to the Mediterranean. What's fascinating is how little they left behind in words: no epic poems, no royal decrees carved in stone. Instead, their story whispers to us through the artifacts they traded, the coins minted in distant lands, and the accounts of travelers who marveled at their wealth. Even more impressive, they achieved all this without relying on fertile land or sprawling cities at first. The desert was their fortress, the shifting sands their advantage. And when they finally chose to carve their legacy into stone at Petra, it wasn't just a display of power, it was the culmination of generations honing the art of turning scarcity into opportunity. Their real genius lay in reading the land like a map, spotting hidden routes where others saw only wilderness. That's how a people once overlooked by history became the invisible architects of an empire built on sand and sweat. The brilliance of Petra's location wasn't just about defense, it was a masterclass in turning geography into power. Picture a hidden valley, shielded by sheer cliffs on all sides, with only one real entrance, the Sick, a winding canyon so narrow that in places sunlight barely touches the ground. This wasn't just a pathway, it was a natural fortress, forcing any approaching caravan or army into a single file, making them vulnerable to Nabataean control. And here's the stroke of genius: they didn't just exploit this bottleneck for security. They monetized it. Every spice-laden camel, every trader hauling silks and incense had to pass through this corridor, paying taxes that fueled Petra's rise. But survival in this desert stronghold demanded more than just clever tolls. Water was the real currency, and the Nabataeans engineered a hydraulic system so advanced it feels ripped from a modern textbook. They carved channels into the rock to catch every precious drop of rainwater, funneling it through a network of reservoirs and cisterns. These weren't just functional, they were architectural marvels hidden in plain sight, ensuring the city thrived where others would wither. That's the paradox of Petra. A place that appeared inhospitable to outsiders became a magnet for wealth and culture because the Nabataeans understood the land's secret logic. And at the end of that winding sick, where travelers emerged from the shadows, they were met with a sight designed to stun the Treasury, Petra's most iconic monument, its facade glowing like a mirage in the desert sun. But this wasn't just a pretty welcome. It was a calculated display, proof that the Nabataeans didn't just survive the desert, they tamed it. Standing at the entrance to Petra, the first glimpse of the Treasury hits you like a mirage made solid. Rose red stone glowing under the desert sun, every inch covered in intricate carvings that seem to defy time. This isn't just a building, it's a statement. The Nabataeans didn't simply carve a tomb or temple, they sculpted their ambition into the cliffside, blending their own artistic flair with the grandeur of Hellenistic architecture. Look closely at those columns and statues. Greek gods stand alongside Nabataean symbols, a visual fusion of worlds connected by trade. But what's truly staggering is the precision. Without modern tools, artisans scaled dizzying heights to chisel floral motifs so delicate they'd challenge today's craftsmen. Theories about the Treasury's purpose swirl like desert winds. Some argue it's a royal tomb, its hidden upper chamber sealed for eternity. Others see the divine in its design, pointing to figures that may represent the goddess Isis, hinting at a sacred space. Then there are the legend's whispers of Pharaoh's treasure hidden inside, bullet marks from Bedouin attempts to blast their way in, chasing rumors of gold. The truth, the Nabataeans left no manual, but perhaps that's the point. The treasury wasn't just functional, it was psychological theater. Imagine weary traders emerging from the dark, sick canyon to this glowing facade, a calculated display meant to awe, to intimidate, to proclaim. Here lies a civilization that bends stone to its will. Beyond its beauty lies an engineering puzzle. How did they plan such a massive structure without blueprints? The answer's in the rock itself. Nabataean masons worked from the top down, carving handholds as they descended, turning the cliff into their scaffolding. Rainwater channels hidden in the ornamentation reveal their practicality. Even this masterpiece served as part of Petra's lifeline. And somewhere behind that iconic urn atop the facade, legends say a secret chamber remains untouched. Modern scans reveal hollow spaces, but the Nabataeans still guard their mysteries. As you walk past, running a hand over stone smoothed by centuries of wind, remember, this was more than art. It was the opening act of a city designed to make the impossible seem effortless. If you think the treasury is Petra's crowning achievement, wait until you meet its more imposing cousin, the monastery. Hidden high in the mountains, this monumental structure makes the treasury look almost modest by comparison. Getting there is half the adventure, an 800-step climb carved directly into the cliffside, each uneven stair a testament to Nabataean determination. Imagine hauling tools and materials up this punishing path, sculpting a 45-meter-tall facade while dangling over sheer drops. That's not just architecture, that's sheer defiance of gravity and logic. The monastery's scale is staggering. Its doorway alone could swallow the treasury's entire lower level. Unlike the ornate treasury, this giant has a raw, almost muscular presence, its columns stripped of decorative flourishes but radiating power. Historians believe this was a sacred space where rituals echoed off the open courtyard's walls long after the city below fell silent. The clues are in the details, niches that may have held religious icons, a back chamber hinting at ceremonies hidden from public view. Some even suggest this was a pilgrimage site, drawing worshippers willing to endure the grueling climb as part of their devotion. But here's what's truly fascinating. The monastery isn't just a temple. It's a masterclass in psychological design. After that exhausting ascent, visitors arrived at a plateau with a view stretching to the horizon, a visceral reminder that the Nabataeans didn't just conquer rock, they commanded the landscape itself. Recent discoveries reveal clever water channels cut into the mountain behind it, proving even this remote sanctuary was engineered for survival. And like all things Nabataean, it served multiple purposes: part spiritual beacon, part territorial marker visible for miles, announcing their dominance to anyone approaching the kingdom. Standing in its shadow, you realize Petra's genius wasn't just in carving stone, but in making the impossible feel intentional. Every step, every chisel mark, a calculated blend of artistry and endurance. The secret to Petra's breathtaking architecture lies not just in what the Nabataeans built, but how they carved an entire civilization from solid rock. Imagine craftsmen dangling from ropes, their iron chisels striking sandstone with surgical precision, each chip revealing hidden layers of rose-colored stone. Unlike the quarries of Egypt or Greece where blocks were hauled away, here the city emerged by subtraction, the cliffs hollowed into homes, temples, and tombs as if the rock itself yielded to their vision. What made this possible? Sandstone's softness allowed detailed carving, yet hardened when exposed to nature's perfect collaboration. But the real stroke of genius was their workflow. Teams worked top to bottom, carving handholds as they descended, turning the cliff face into their own scaffolding. No blueprints, no margin for error. Just generations of knowledge passed through hands that understood stone like skin. Yet even more impressive than the facades was what lay beneath them. Hidden channels carved into rooftops funneled rare rainwater into vaulted cisterns, some large enough to supply entire neighborhoods. Dams redirected flash floods through a labyrinth of tunnels, transforming deadly desert storms into life-giving reservoirs. This wasn't just survival, it was hydrological alchemy, turning scarcity into abundance. Modern engineers still marvel at their gravity-fed systems, where even the slant of a staircase doubled as a water conduit. The Nabataeans didn't fight their environment, they listened to it, bending its rules without breaking them. Now look beyond the stone. Every swirl of a capital, every niche in a tomb wall carried meaning. Their architecture was a visual language, Greek columns mingling with Egyptian cornices, Assyrian reliefs whispering alongside local deities. A temple's curve might mirror the path of a trade route. A tomb's height could signify status as clearly as a ledger. Even the interplay of light was deliberate. The treasury's facade catches dawn at perfect angles, making the stone glow like embers, a daily rebirth etched in rock. This was more than engineering. It was storytelling in 3 dimensions, a civilization declaring its place in the world not with conquests, but with the quiet eloquence of chisel and patience. Look beyond Petra's towering facades, and you'll find a silent language etched into every surface, symbols whispering of gods, kings, and the crossroads of civilizations. Take the winged lions guarding tombs, their stone feathers frozen mid-beat. Not just decoration, but spiritual sentinels believed to carry souls to the afterlife. Or the eagle carvings, talons outstretched, symbols of the chief god Dashara, linking earthly power to divine authority. These weren't random choices. Each motif was a deliberate message, like pages of a sacred text written in rock. The obelisk tomb reveals another layer of this storytelling. At its base, a classic Nabataean tomb. Above it, 4 sharp peaks echoing Egypt's pyramids. This wasn't mere imitation, it was a bold declaration. We are part of this wider world. Trade didn't just bring silks and spices to Petra, it seeped into their art, blending Roman precision, Hellenistic drama, and pharaonic mysticism into something uniquely Nabataean. Even their gods wore many faces. Dashara, often represented by a simple stone block, could also appear with the features of Zeus or Dionysus, depending on who was looking. A pragmatic spirituality tailored to the merchants and travelers passing through, but the most telling symbols might be the ones they avoided. No grand statues of conquering kings, no battle scenes carved in triumph. Instead, tombs bore inscriptions celebrating merchants and engineers, proof that in Petra, wealth and wisdom held more prestige than war. Hidden in alcoves, small carved niches called betile stones housed spirits of ancestors, turning entire cliffs into family albums of the divine. Now imagine walking these streets when they pulsed with life. The same symbols that awe us today weren't just art, they were part of a living dialogue between earth and sky, trader and artisan, mortal and immortal. And as the sun set, painting the sandstone in fiery hues, those silent carvings would have seemed to breathe, their shadows stretching like fingers reaching across time. Beneath Petra's monumental facades, the city pulsed with a rhythm far more human, a symphony of clinking pottery wheels, haggling merchants, and the scent of roasting meats drifting through narrow streets. This wasn't just a stone sculpture park. It was a living, breathing metropolis where artisans turned raw materials into luxury goods coveted across the ancient world. Nabataean potters shaped clay into delicate, eggshell-thin vessels, their surfaces painted with intricate patterns that mimicked the swirls of desert winds. Weavers loomed textiles dyed vibrant purples and crimsons, colors extracted from sea snails and desert plants, while metalworkers hammered silver into jewelry so fine it rivaled pieces from Alexandria. But what really fueled this hive of activity? Look to the marketplace where camel caravans unloaded sacks of pepper from India, bolts of Chinese silk, and frankincense so precious it was weighed in gold. Yet the Nabataeans weren't just middlemen, they transformed these imports. Local workshops repackaged spices into smaller clay jars stamped with their seals, adding value before sending them westward. Even their diet told a story of connectivity. Date palms and olives grown in terraced gardens, supplemented by salted fish from the Red Sea and wine shipped from Mediterranean ports. Social hierarchies etched themselves into the city's layout. The wealthy lived in sprawling villas carved high on the cliffs, their homes overlooking grand tombs they'd commissioned in advance, a blend of vanity and piety. Meanwhile, laborers dwelled in simpler dwellings clustered near the wadi floor, their lives documented not in stone, but in fragments of cooking pots and children's toys found by archaeologists. Petra's downfall wasn't sudden collapse but a slow fading, like a caravan disappearing over the horizon. As Rome mastered sea routes to India, desert trails grew quiet. Earthquakes shattered aqueducts, and without trade wealth to repair them, the water systems faltered. Families packed their looms and anvils, leaving echoes in empty workshops. Yet the city never fully died, just transformed. Bedouin tribes repurposed tombs as seasonal shelters, and later, crusaders built a fortress atop its ruins. Petra's true legacy, proof that even the mightiest cities are shaped not just by stone, but by the invisible currents of commerce and time. The golden age of Petra didn't end with a dramatic siege or fiery conquest. It slipped away like sand through an hourglass, one grain at a time. When Rome absorbed Nabatea into its empire in the year 106, the change seemed subtle at first. Petra kept its grandeur, even minting coins bearing Trajan's face alongside Nabataean symbols. But the slow shift was undeniable. Trade routes that once funneled wealth through the Sikh now bypassed it entirely as Roman ships mastered monsoon winds to sail directly to India. Then came the earthquakes, not once but repeatedly, shattering aqueducts and toppling columns. Each tremor left cracks not just in the stone but in the city's lifeline. Yet the most telling clue of Petra's decline lies in what wasn't rebuilt. Where the Nabataeans of old would have swiftly repaired a collapsed reservoir, later generations simply moved away from damaged neighborhoods, leaving whole districts to the desert. By the time Islamic armies swept through the region in the 7th century, Petra was already a ghost town, its empty theaters echoing only with the wind. For over 1,000 years, the city existed only in Bedouin campfire tales and cryptic medieval maps labeling it as the place of the high rocks. Then, in 1812, a Swiss explorer named Johann Ludwig Burkhardt disguised himself as an Arab scholar. bribed local guides and followed rumors of a lost city. When he squeezed through the sick and saw the treasury's facade for the first time, he later wrote that his hands trembled so violently he could barely sketch. But it wasn't just the architecture that stunned him. It was the realization that an entire civilization could vanish so completely from memory. His published accounts sparked a frenzy among European adventurers, though few could brave the treacherous journey. Even when artists like David Roberts arrived decades later to document the ruins, Bedouin tribes still believed the tombs were haunted by jinn, firing warning shots at anyone who lingered too long. Petra's rediscovery holds a mirror to history itself, how empires rise not with a bang, but with a slow accumulation of ingenuity, and fade not in flames, but in the quiet unraveling of forgotten trade routes and crumbling pipes. The sand that once threatened to bury Petra forever instead became its preservative, sealing away a masterpiece until the world was ready to marvel at it anew. Johann Ludwig Burkhardt's journey to Petra reads like something from an adventure novel, a Swiss explorer with a borrowed name, a carefully crafted disguise, and a mission so dangerous that one wrong move could have cost him his life. Posing as Sheikh Ibrahim ibn Abdallah, a scholar seeking to sacrifice a goat at Aaron's tomb, he convinced skeptical Bedouin guides to lead him through the hidden ravines of southern Jordan. The moment he glimpsed the treasury's rose-red facade emerging from the narrow sick, his stunned reaction had to be concealed after all. A devout Muslim pilgrim wouldn't marvel at pagan ruins. He later scribbled notes in secrecy, his hands shaking not just from awe but from the sheer audacity of what he'd achieved. But Burkhardt's discovery came at a price. When his journals reached Europe, they ignited a frenzy among treasure hunters and antiquarians, all eager to claim a piece of the lost city. Within decades, fragile reliefs were hacked from walls, statues vanished into private collections, and even the iconic urn atop the treasury bore bullet marks from attempts to dislodge rumored gold hidden inside. The irony was cruel. Petra's rebirth in the Western imagination came hand in hand with its plunder. Yet Burkhardt himself had been remarkably respectful, documenting rather than looting, his notes filled with precise sketches and observations that became the first roadmap for serious scholars. What's often overlooked is how his discovery rewrote history itself. Before Burkhardt, the Nabataeans were barely a footnote in ancient texts, a minor tribe eclipsed by Rome and Egypt. His accounts forced the academic world to reckon with a civilization that had mastered trade, engineering, and art on par with the greatest empires. The very fact that Petra's existence had faded from global memory for 1,000 years only deepened its mystique. By the late 19th century, artists like David Roberts traveled there at great personal risk, returning with vivid paintings that turned the ruins into a romantic-era obsession. Petra's transformation from forgotten city to cultural icon wasn't just about archaeology, it became a mirror for each era's fantasies. Victorians saw a moral tale of rise and fall, while early filmmakers framed it as a setting for biblical epics. Today, its silhouette grazes everything from travel magazines to Star Wars, proof that the Nabataeans built something timeless. But beyond the hype lies a quieter truth. Burkhardt didn't just uncover stone. He resurrected an entire people's legacy, reminding us that history's greatest treasures aren't always gold, but the stories waiting patiently in the shadows of cliffs. The moment Indiana Jones stepped through the narrow sick and laid eyes on Petra's treasury, the ancient city vaulted from history books into global pop culture immortality. That iconic scene in The Last Crusade did more than just showcase a stunning location. It crystallized Petra's reputation as the ultimate lost city, a real-life treasure hidden in plain sight. But Hollywood's fascination was just the beginning. UNESCO designation as a World Heritage Site in 1985 didn't just preserve Petra's stones, it transformed the ruins into a living classroom where every carving tells a story of human ingenuity. Today, over 1 million visitors trek through the Sikh each year, their footsteps echoing where camel caravans once trod, fueling nearly half of Jordan's tourism revenue. Yet fame comes at a cost. The very breath of crowds raises humidity inside tombs, threatening fragile pigments. Footsteps wear down ancient pavements, while well-meaning touches leave invisible oils that erode stone over decades. Conservation teams now walk a tightrope balancing access with preservation, employing everything from 3D scanning to monitor minute cracks to redirecting visitor flows with cleverly placed pathways. Even Hollywood's spotlight had unintended consequences. After Indiana Jones, the Treasury's courtyard became a sea of selfie sticks, forcing officials to limit close access to protect the facade. But Petra's magic endures because it speaks to something deeper than adventure fantasies. Artists from David Roberts' 19th century paintings to modern Instagram influencers have tried to capture its golden glow at dawn, each generation projecting their own dreams onto these cliffs. Archaeologists, too, keep rewriting Petra's story. Recent thermal scans revealed hidden chambers beneath the treasury, while satellite imagery uncovered lost suburbs swallowed by sand. The Nabataeans built for eternity, but they couldn't have imagined their city would become a mirror for our own fascination with the past, a place where history doesn't just sit static, but sparks new discoveries with every passing year. Now shift your gaze from the stones to the spirits once believed to inhabit them. Beyond the glint of Hollywood spotlights and tourist cameras, Petra was, and for many still is, a sacred landscape where the divine etched itself into the very rock. Petra's cliffs don't just hold the echoes of chisels, they reverberate with centuries of whispered prayers. High above the treasury, niches carved into the rock once cradled sacred stones representing Dashara, the Nabataeans' enigmatic chief god. Unlike the flamboyant deities of Greece or Rome, Dashara often appeared as a simple rectangular block, a presence felt rather than depicted. Yet this austere symbolism hid a cosmopolitan spirituality. Step into the Temple of the Winged Lions and you'll find Al-Azhar, a goddess of power and protection adorned with Hellenistic flourishes, her image fusing Arab traditions with the artistic language of distant empires. The real surprise, Petra's sacred landscape kept evolving long after the Nabataeans faded. Byzantine masons repurposed grand tombs into churches, their crosses chiseled beside weathered pagan symbols. Archaeologists uncovered one chapel floor mosaics so vibrant they look freshly laid, depicting animals and vines entwined with Greek inscriptions, proof that faith here was never static. Then there's the legend of Aaron's tomb, its white dome gleaming atop Jabal Haran. For generations, Bedouin and pilgrims alike believed this was where Moses' brother died, weaving Petra into the tapestry of biblical lore. But the greatest mystery lies in what we can't see. Thermal scans of the monastery reveal hollow chambers hinting at unexcavated ritual spaces, while inscriptions in a cryptic Nabataean script still defy full translation. Some scholars speculate that certain alignments between tombs and celestial events might map an ancient sacred calendar encoded in stone. Every layer excavated poses new questions. Was Petra a destination for spiritual pilgrimages, or simply a city where the divine blended seamlessly with daily commerce? The answer, like the wind through the Sikh, slips just beyond our grasp, reminding us that some stones refuse to give up all their secrets. Beneath Petra's most famous monuments, the earth holds secrets even modern technology can't fully unravel. Ground-penetrating radar pulses have revealed hollow spaces under the treasury's courtyard, rooms untouched for millennia, their entrances deliberately sealed. Are these the resting places of Nabataean royalty, their treasures still intact, or perhaps hidden chambers for rituals too sacred to conduct in daylight? The debate ignites imaginations, especially when scans show corridors angling downward, deeper than any excavation has reached. Meanwhile, atop Jebel Madba, the so-called high place of sacrifice raises its own questions. That flat altar stone, grooved to channel liquids, certainly witnessed offerings, but to whom? Some scholars argue the alignment of nearby obelisks points to celestial events, suggesting this wasn't just a slaughter site, but an open-air observatory where priests tracked the stars. Then there's the puzzle of Petra's true name. The word Petra simply means rock in Greek, a nickname given by outsiders. The Nabataeans left no inscriptions calling their city by this title. Roman accounts mention Rakmu, likely derived from a local term, but even that remains uncertain. It's as if the city's architects wanted their greatest creation to defy simple labels, its identity as fluid as the trade winds that brought it wealth. What's tantalizing is how these mysteries feed each other. A newly discovered water channel might explain why certain chambers stayed dry for centuries, preserving whatever lies within. A fragment of text mentioning lunar ceremonies could rewrite our understanding of that high altar. Every season, archaeologists return with sharper tools, LiDAR, drones mapping surface anomalies, endoscopic cameras snaking into cracks, yet Petra guards its truths like a sphinx. The real revelation, how much we still don't know. And speaking of revelations, nothing showcases Nabataean brilliance quite like their mastery of the one resource scarcer than gold in the desert: water. Their systems were so advanced they turned barren rock into an oasis. But how? That's where the story gets even more astonishing. The Nabataeans didn't just build in the desert, they outsmarted it, transforming blistering wastelands into thriving neighborhoods through sheer hydraulic genius. Picture this network hidden in plain sight, terracotta pipes snaking beneath streets, their interiors coated with waterproof lime plaster so effective it still repels water 2,000 years later. These weren't makeshift solutions, but a carefully calculated system where every slope, every channel angle was calibrated to perfection, their crowning achievement. The Six Ancient Dam, a curved wall of stone that tamed flash floods, diverting destructive torrents into a labyrinth of underground cisterns with enough capacity to sustain 40,000 people. Modern engineers have measured these reservoirs, some holding over 1 million gallons, and found their evaporation rates lower than contemporary desert tanks, thanks to clever positioning in shaded canyons. What's truly remarkable is how the Nabataeans turned water scarcity into strategic advantage. While other cities relied on predictable rivers, Petra's hidden infrastructure made it impervious to siege. Even during droughts, secret springs fed through rock-cut tunnels kept gardens flourishing where invaders found only dust. Archaeologists have mapped over 200 cisterns, many disguised as ordinary cliffs or tomb facades, their spillways engineered to redistribute overflow to lower-tiered storage with mathematical precision. This mastery elevates Petra beyond mere ruins. It's a case study in sustainable living. Recent studies show their water filtration systems used gravity and sand beds to remove sediment centuries before modern purification. Yet perhaps the most telling detail is found in the pottery shards. Humble cups and jugs designed with narrow necks to minimize spills, proving water conservation wasn't just civic policy but cultural habit. Now, stack this innovation against the ancient world's other engineering marvels. While Roman aqueducts stretched farther, they required flat landscapes and slave labor. Petra's systems worked with the terrain, requiring no external power beyond rainfall and ingenuity. Compared to Egypt's Nile dependence or Mesopotamia's fragile irrigation, the Nabataeans created a self-replenishing oasis, one that modern Jordan still draws from today, proving some solutions are timeless. Scale this brilliance across an empire, and you begin to understand how a nomadic tribe carved not just a city, but a legacy that flows as steadily as the water they harnessed. Where other ancient wonders rose from quarried stones stacked skyward, Petra emerged in reverse, a city chiseled inward, its grandeur revealed by what was taken away rather than added. Compare this to Egypt's Giza Plateau, where armies of laborers hauled limestone blocks across miles of desert, or Rome's forums, their marble columns shipped from distant lands. Petra's builders worked with the landscape like sculptors, freeing a statue from raw marble, turning the mountain itself into their canvas. But isolation shaped more than just construction methods. While cities like Palmyra thrived as cosmopolitan crossroads, their art and architecture, openly borrowing from every passing caravan, Petra incubated a style all its own. Walk through its colonnaded street and you'll spot Greek acanthus leaves twisting into Nabataean vine motifs, Roman pediments framing Arabian star symbols. This wasn't haphazard imitation, it was cultural alchemy. The famous broken pediment, design above many doorways, a deliberate rebellion against classical symmetry, as if the architects whispered, "We respect your rules, but we'll reshape them to our taste." Then there's the spice trade. Salt and silk traveled through Palmyra, but Petra controlled something far more precious, frankincense and myrrh. These aromatic resins, worth their weight in gold, weren't just luxuries, they were essentials for temple rituals, royal courts, and funeral rites across the ancient world. The Nabataeans didn't merely transport these goods, they mastered their journey, cultivating relationships with South Arabian growers and Mediterranean buyers alike. Their secret, a network of hidden desert wells and way stations, turning the most barren stretches into secure highways. Where others saw impassable wastes, they saw opportunity, a strategy that made Petra the silent gatekeeper of an empire built on scent and smoke. Yet what truly sets Petra apart is its refusal to fit neatly into history's boxes. Egypt's pyramids proclaim permanence, Rome's ruins shout imperial power. Petra's beauty lies in its paradoxes, a nomadic people's eternal city, a trading hub carved from solitude, a masterpiece that feels both grand and intimate. Even its rediscovery defied expectations, emerging not through systematic archaeology, but through a disguised explorer's hushed gasp at the end of a treacherous canyon. Perhaps that's the ultimate lesson of these rose-red cliffs. Greatness isn't always loud. Sometimes it waits patiently in the shadows until the world is ready to see it anew. Frankincense wasn't just a commodity to the Nabataeans, it was liquid gold, and Petra sat at the beating heart of an invisible empire built on fragrance. Picture camel caravans stretching across the horizon, each beast laden with resin so precious that a single gram could buy a month's wages in Rome. These aromatic treasures began their journey in the distant Dhofar region of Oman, where frankincense trees bled their milky sap under the scorching sun. For 2,000 grueling miles, the caravans inched forward across dunes where temperatures could melt sand into glass, through mountain passes haunted by bandits, all to reach one critical checkpoint, Petra's hidden valley. Here's what made the Nabataeans trade geniuses. They didn't just tax passing goods, they became indispensable middlemen, mastering every link in the chain. Their scouts knew where to find secret desert springs, allowing them to guide caravans along routes others deemed impassable. Their negotiators spoke a dozen languages, bargaining with South Arabian harvesters and Egyptian priests alike. And their engineers built way stations with ingenious cooling systems to preserve the resin's potency, because aged frankincense fetched triple the price. But this monopoly came with a target on their backs. Rome craved control of the trade, not just for temple ceremonies where smoke curled toward the gods, but for medicine. Frankincense oil treated everything from toothaches to plague. Cleopatra reportedly bathed in myrrh-infused wines to preserve her legendary beauty. When Pompey's armies marched east, they weren't just conquering land, they were after the ultimate luxury supply line. The proof of this wealth glows in Petra's very stone. Those towering tombs lining the cliffs, their fiscal statements carved in rock. The larger the facade, the more incense the family traded. Some bear inscriptions boasting of 10,000 camel loads moved in a single season. Yet the Nabataeans' real power lay in their restraint. They never became greedy middlemen. By ensuring fair prices and safe passage, they turned a trade route into a web of alliances that outlasted empires. Now, trace your finger along the grooves worn into the six walls by countless caravan ropes. These silent scars tell the true story. Petra didn't rise because of its stones, but because of the sweet-smelling treasure that flowed through its veins. And when we step into the royal tombs next, we'll see how those who mastered this trade chose to be remembered for eternity. Rising above Petra's bustling ancient streets, the royal tombs command attention like thrones carved into the cliffs, each facade a manifesto in stone. The urn tomb's massive courtyard, supported by arched substructures, suggests this wasn't just a burial site but a stage for ceremonies, its upper chamber glowing at sunset as if lit from within. Nearby, the Corinthian tomb's delicate columns and friezes borrow liberally from Roman design, yet twist them into something distinctly Nabataean, floral motifs erupting between classical symmetry, as if the stone itself rebelled against imitation. Then there's the palace tomb, its 3 stories of niches and pilasters mimicking a living ruler's residence, blurring the line between afterlife and earthly power. Inscriptions here are tantalizing breadcrumbs. One weathered panel near the Silt tomb mentions a Nabataean king named Malachus, while another fragment references the people of Rakhmu, Petra's true name, lost for centuries. These aren't just epitaphs, they're rare flashes of a language that mostly survives through traders' receipts scratched on pottery shards, the real intrigue. Some tombs bear Greek or Latin phrases alongside Nabataean script, proof that even in death, Petra's elite straddled worlds, their identities as layered as the rock itself. But step away from these monumental facades, and the cliffside tells another story. Hundreds of simpler tombs dot the lower slopes, their unadorned doorways speaking of merchants, artisans, and laborers who fueled Petra's wealth. Archaeologists found humbler graves further out, some containing only a single pottery lamp or bronze bracelet, modest offerings that whisper of lives spent in the city's shadow. The contrast is striking. Where royalty commissioned eternal palaces in the rock, commoners rested under rough-hewn markers now worn smooth by wind. Yet even these quieter burials hold surprises. Recent excavations uncovered a potter's tomb filled not with gold, but with his finest creations, bowls polished to a sheen, their rims etched with desert flora. Another held a child's toy camel, its wooden wheels still turning after millennia. These aren't just graves, they're snapshots of a society where prestige wasn't reserved for kings alone. The true measure of Petra's greatness lies not just in how it honored its rulers, but in how it remembered the hands that built them. Walk through Petra's less visited corners, and the cliffs whisper a different story. Rows of unassuming doorways carved just high enough for a body to pass. These aren't the towering monuments of kings, but the final homes of bakers, weavers, and water carriers. Inside, the walls bear no intricate gods or winged lions, just shallow niches where oil lamps once cast flickering light on quiet farewells. Yet these humble spaces speak volumes. The placement tells its own tale. Wealthier families secured higher elevations, their tombs catching the morning sun, while laborers rested in the shadowed lower tiers, their doorways worn smooth by centuries of windblown sand. What's extraordinary is what these graves held. Archaeologists sifting through the dust found not gold or imported treasures, but the intimate debris of daily life. A pottery shard etched with a child's doodle, a bronze ring too small for anything but a young girl's finger, even a petrified date pit left as a snack for the afterlife. One tomb yielded a set of carpenter's tools, Their wooden handles long crumbled, but the iron blades still sharp, proof that in Petra, even the afterlife demanded practicality. These weren't just burials, they were time capsules of a working-class world rarely celebrated in stone. Now, shift your gaze to the faint scratches beside these doorways. What first looks like random weathering reveals itself as crude carvings, a camel's hump here, a cluster of grapes there. These weren't decorative, they were signatures of the illiterate, symbols declaring, "This is who I was," in a society where only elites could afford scribes. A wine merchant might mark his tomb with a jug. A mother might leave a child's tiny handprint. Each is a voice clawing its way out of silence. But the real revelation came in 2015, when researchers scanning a cluster of modest tombs discovered something unexpected: a burial with Greek pottery alongside a Nabataean lamp, and a Roman-style brooch resting on a local woolen shroud. This wasn't just proof of trade connections, it showed that Petra's working class lived and died at the crossroads of cultures. The grand tombs may boast of conquest and gods, but these small caves tell a subtler truth, that Petra's true genius wasn't just in carving rock, but in weaving together the threads of ordinary lives into something extraordinary. Now, to fully hear those voices, we must learn their language, the cryptic script that tied this diverse civilization together. The Nabataean alphabet holds clues not just to royal decrees, but to marketplace haggles and love letters etched on broken pottery. The markings left by Nabataean hands tell a story not just in what they say, but in the very shapes of their letters, curved strokes chiseled into rock that would one day flow into the elegant script of modern Arabic. These inscriptions, often simple prayers or merchant signatures scratched onto cliff faces, use an alphabet born from Aramaic yet dancing with its own distinct rhythm. Look closely at a temple dedication from the 1st century, and you'll spot letters that seem to lean forward, as if rushing toward the future. The same characters that would evolve into the Arabic Aleph and Ba centuries later. Yet for all their historical significance, most surviving texts are frustratingly brief graffiti declaring, "May Dashara be remembered," or pottery shards noting 50 measures of oil owed. The rarity of lengthy scrolls means scholars must stitch together their understanding like detectives, reconstructing a burned manuscript from fragments. What makes these linguistic breadcrumbs so vital? They capture the Nabataeans in unguarded moments, not the grand proclamations of kings, but the everyday exchanges of traders, the whispered prayers of pilgrims. A crudely carved love poem near the sick reveals more about personal lives than any royal decree, while inventory lists etched into warehouse walls expose the nuts and bolts of an economy built on frankincense and spice. Even the spacing of words tells a story. Early inscriptions cram letters tightly, as if stone was precious, while later texts sprawl with confidence, reflecting a culture coming into its own. Then there are the puzzles. A handful of bilingual inscriptions, Greek alongside Nabataean, act as Rosetta Stones for deciphering their script, but some symbols still resist interpretation, their meanings locked away like the hidden chambers beneath Petra's monuments. The greatest mystery: why a people so meticulous in recording business transactions left so little about their own histories. Perhaps they preferred to let their architecture speak for them. And speak it does, especially when viewed through the lens of Hellenistic influence. Walk through Petra's colonnaded street, and the marriage of cultures becomes undeniable: Greek columns crowned with Nabataean floral motifs, friezes where Medusa's snarl gives way to desert vines. This wasn't imitation, it was reinvention. The Nabataeans didn't just borrow from the Hellenistic world, they absorbed its vocabulary, then wrote their own poetry in stone. While the towering monuments of Petra showcase kings and merchants, the city's true soul emerges in the stories of its women, figures long overshadowed by history's spotlight. Carved reliefs reveal noble women draped in finely pleated linen, their arms laden with gold bracelets, standing shoulder to shoulder with male counterparts in temple dedications. One particularly striking tomb inscription celebrates a woman named Huldu, identified not just as a wife but as a priestess of Al-Azhar, her name etched alongside her husband's with equal prominence. These weren't silent bystanders, they were power brokers who managed estates, funded civic projects, and even influenced trade deals. Archaeology whispers secrets the stones don't spell out. Excavations of wealthy homes uncovered cosmetics palettes with traces of imported coal, delicate glass perfume bottles from Alexandria, and looms weighted with unfinished textiles, proof that Nabataean women weren't confined to the shadows. A fragment of a legal document found near the Temple of the Winged Lions even records a woman named Amat Alat selling property without male co-signature, a startling autonomy for the ancient world. But the most compelling evidence lies in Petra's spiritual landscape. The cult of Al-Azhar, goddess of power and protection, dominated religious life, her lion-headed iconography appearing everywhere from temple walls to humble amulets. Priestesses like Huldu likely presided over rituals, their authority echoing in the small betyl stones found in homes' miniature altars where women may have conducted private devotions. Even in death, equality persisted. Couples shared grand tomb facades, their inscriptions praising shared achievements rather than just male lineage. This subtle revolution in stone challenges our assumptions about ancient gender roles. While Roman women needed male guardians for legal transactions and Athenian wives were barred from symposia, Petra's elite women moved through public spaces with visible authority. Their legacy isn't written in grand decrees but in the quiet details. A child's grave containing a doll wearing a precise miniature of a noblewoman's headdress, or a fresco fragment showing women reclining at banquet tables alongside men. The message is clear. In Petra's sandstone corridors, women weren't just ornaments, they helped carve the city's destiny. From these personal stories, we turn to the broader canvas of Petra's final days, not with a sudden collapse, but with a slow fading like candlelight guttering against the night. Coinage tells a story most inscriptions won't in Petra. Silver drachms bore the faces of queens alongside kings, their names etched with equal prominence. Take Queen Shakalath, whose stern profile stared from currency minted during her joint rule with King Arata's IV. This wasn't vanity, it was a political statement. While Roman empresses lurked in palace shadows, Nabataean royal women signed treaties, received ambassadors, and even commanded armies during crises. A surviving inscription from the northern city of Basra praises Shakalath's wisdom in brokering a peace between warring tribes, a diplomatic coup credited to her alone. Beyond the elite, ordinary Nabataean women left their own marks. Legal tablets detail widows inheriting entire caravans, while divorce settlements show women walking away with substantial assets unthinkable in contemporary Athens or Rome. Archaeologists unearthed a merchant's archive near Petra's market, its clay receipts revealing female names running spice ventures and textile workshops. One particularly feisty document records a woman named Zabda successfully suing her brother-in-law for withholding profits from her late husband's frankincense trade. What made this possible? The Nabataeans' nomadic roots may hold the key. In desert societies, survival demanded every member contribute, blurring rigid gender roles. Petra's pantheon reflected this goddess. Al-Azhar wasn't just worshipped, she was feared, her lion-headed statues guarding city gates. Even the famous eye idol figurines found in homes weren't mere decorations, but talismans invoking female protection over households. Yet Petra's progressive legacy faces modern threats far more relentless than any ancient invader. The same soft sandstone that yielded to Nabataean chisels now crumbles under tourist footsteps and climate extremes. Morning dew seeps into porous rock, freezing and expanding overnight, a slow-motion demolition invisible to the naked eye. Conservation teams race against time, using everything from nanotechnology adhesives to 3D printed replacement stones, but the battle is uneven. The very act of loving Petra, of millions yearning to touch its rose-red walls, may ultimately erase what we cherish most. Petra's iconic rose-red facades face a modern paradox. The very love that resurrected them now threatens their survival. Each year, over 1 million footsteps wear down ancient staircases polished smooth by time, while the humidity from visitors' breath silently degrades fragile pigments inside tombs. Conservationists wage a quiet war against these invisible enemies, employing laser scans to track millimeter-scale erosion and restricting access to the most vulnerable areas. Yet nature remains an even more relentless foe. Flash floods, once harnessed by Nabataean engineers, now tear through ancient channels clogged by centuries of sediment, while earthquakes continue their slow toppling of columns already weakened by time. Teams from the Petra Archaeological Park balance preservation with accessibility, installing discrete steel cables to stabilize cliffs and designing elevated walkways that protect pavements without sacrificing the raw drama of the site. The solution lies in sustainable tourism, a delicate dance between sharing Petra's wonders and safeguarding them. New visitor routes divert crowds from overcrowded areas, while nighttime LED lighting reduces the need for damaging daytime foot traffic. Local Bedouin guides trained in conservation now lead specialized, slow tourism hikes, teaching visitors to read the landscape's subtle warnings like their ancestors once did. Even Hollywood plays a role. Recent films use 3D scanning to recreate Petra digitally, reducing the need for disruptive on-location shoots, but preservation extends beyond physical barriers. Researchers race to document fading inscriptions using multispectral imaging, uncovering texts invisible to the naked eye. Meanwhile, Jordan's Adopt a Heritage program lets donors sponsor individual monuments not for naming rights, but for emergency stabilization funds. The ultimate goal, ensuring Petra remains not a frozen museum piece, but a living classroom where future generations can marvel at human ingenuity. Now, shift your gaze 60 miles northwest to the ruins of Little Petra Sik al-Barid, where an even more fragile treasure awaits. This compact sandstone canyon served as Petra's bustling suburban counterpart, its walls adorned with faded frescoes and its alleyways once thick with the scent of fermenting wine. Unlike its famous sibling, here you can still press your palm against untouched stone where Nabataean hands once worked, tracing chisel marks left deliberately rough, a rare glimpse of the city before the final polish of history smoothed its edges. Little Petra may lack the towering monuments of its famous neighbor, but step inside Sik al-Barid's narrow canyon and you'll discover something even rarer, a living snapshot of Nabataean daily existence. Where Petra's grand facades were built to impress, this satellite settlement thrived as a rest stop for weary caravans, its rock-cut dining halls still echoing with the ghostly clatter of ceramic plates. One particularly vivid fresco survives, grapevines twisting across plaster walls in vibrant blues and reds, a tantalizing glimpse of the colorful artistry lost to time in the main city. These weren't just decorations, they were advertisements for the Nabataeans' famed vineyards, their wines so coveted that Roman poets praised them in verse. The real magic lies in the details modern visitors often miss. Peer into a seemingly plain alcove, and you'll find carved ledges where merchants displayed textiles under shaded overhangs, or grooves in the floor designed to channel spilled olive oil away from precious goods. Unlike Petra's ceremonial spaces, Little Petra feels intimate. A wine cellar's hollowed-out storage niches still smell faintly of fermented fruit after 2 millennia, while a triclinium's stone benches curve to encourage leisurely feasting under starlight. Archaeologists found charred date pits and fish bones in these rooms, remnants of meals shared by traders haggling over frankincense prices. What makes this site indispensable is how it recontextualizes Petra's main attractions. Those grand temples and tombs were just the glittering tip of an iceberg. Little Petra reveals the bustling human machinery that kept the empire running. A faded inscription near a water cistern records a merchant's prayer for safe travels, scribbled in haste alongside a crude drawing of a camel. It's this juxtaposition of sacred and mundane that brings the Nabataeans into focus, not as distant figures frozen in stone, but as pragmatic people who built an oasis of commerce and comfort in the desert's embrace. Now tilt your gaze upward, beyond the frescoed ceilings and into the night sky where the Nabataeans saw divine patterns guiding their lives. The same people who engineered perfect water channels also mapped celestial currents, aligning their sacred spaces with the cosmos in ways we're only beginning to decipher. The Nabataeans didn't just carve their city into the earth, they etched it across the sky. At certain times of year, sunlight slices through Petra's rock-cut corridors with razor precision, illuminating sacred niches only during solstices. The high place of sacrifice isn't merely an altar. Its twin obelisks frame the rising sun during equinoxes like a celestial gatekeeper, while the monastery's doorway aligns with the winter solstice sunset, setting the entire facade ablaze in golden light. These aren't coincidences, they're proof of a civilization that read the heavens as clearly as their desert trails. Modern astronomers have mapped these alignments to uncover a sophisticated understanding of celestial cycles. The positioning of certain tombs suggests they served as eternal calendars, their shadows marking agricultural seasons or religious festivals. Even the sixth winding path may mirror celestial patterns. Some scholars note its curves echo the meandering path of Venus across the night sky, the same planet associated with Al-Azhar, their warrior goddess. This cosmic awareness wasn't just spiritual, it was practical. The Nabataeans used star patterns to time caravan departures, ensuring safe passage through the desert when temperatures dropped. Fast forward 2,000 years, and Petra's genius still whispers to those who shape our world. Contemporary architects study its passive cooling systems, how tomb entrances face north to avoid sun exposure, or how air channels carved beneath floors create natural ventilation. The Getty Conservation Institute recently modeled Petra's water management for drought-proofing modern cities, while earthquake engineers analyze how its flexible, rock-carved structures withstand tremors that topple conventional buildings. But perhaps the most striking inspiration lies in Petra's harmony with its environment, a lesson modern designers are desperately relearning. Like the Nabataeans, today's green architects build with the land rather than against it, using natural contours for insulation and harvesting every drop of rainwater. One Dubai skyscraper now mimics Petra's rose-colored stone to reduce solar heat gain, while a California university campus replicates its ancient cistern network. The message is clear. In an age of climate crisis, we're finally catching up to a civilization that thrived in the desert not by conquering nature, but by listening to its rhythms, both earthly and celestial. Petra's influence stretches far beyond ancient history. Its fingerprints are all over the cutting edge of modern architecture. Take the soaring glass towers of Dubai, where engineers analyzed Petra's north-facing tomb entrances to design sun-deflecting facades that slash cooling costs by 30%. Or consider the underground eco-villages in Arizona, where builders mimicked Nabataean rock-cut insulation to create homes that stay 60 degrees Fahrenheit year-round without artificial heating. Even the world's largest tech campuses now borrow Petra's hydraulic wisdom, using gravity-fed runoff systems modeled after those ancient cisterns to irrigate drought-proof gardens. The irony is poetic. A civilization that carved its future from stone now shapes how we build ours in an age of climate crisis. What makes Petra's legacy so vital isn't just its individual innovations, but its holistic philosophy, the idea that architecture should collaborate with nature rather than conquer it. Spanish architect Ricardo Bofill famously reimagined Petra's rock-cut efficiency in his cement quarry transformation, turning an industrial scar into a sunlit oasis of curved walls and hanging gardens. Meanwhile, Himalayan monasteries employ Nabataean-inspired ventilation shafts to circulate thin mountain air without electricity. The parallels are everywhere once you start looking. A Swiss library's rainwater channels mirror Petra's hidden conduits, and a Kenyan hospital's shaded courtyards replicate the cooling effects of the Six Narrow Canyon. Yet the deepest lesson might be one of humility. In an era of steel megastructures, Petra reminds us that true sustainability isn't about brute force technology, but about listening to the land's contours, to the sun's path, to the whisper of scarce water. When Jordan's Aqaba airport installed a Petra-inspired thermal mass cooling system, they didn't just replicate ancient techniques, they rediscovered a lost mindset. Nabataean builders worked with the certainty that their creations needed to last centuries, not just decades, a radical notion in today's disposable construction culture. So why does Petra still steal our breath 2 millennia later? Because it speaks to something primal in us, the awe of seeing human ingenuity not as a force that dominates nature, but as one that dances with it. Every time a modern architect studies those rose-red cliffs, they're not just learning ancient tricks, they're touching the blueprint of a civilization that turned scarcity into abundance and stone into poetry. Petra endures not as a relic, but as a mirror showing us that the future of design might just lie in the wisdom we forgot. Petra stands as more than a collection of ruins. It's a masterclass in what humans can achieve when creativity meets necessity. The Nabataeans didn't just shape stone, they bent an entire landscape to their will, leaving behind lessons that still resonate today. Think about their water systems, quietly defying the desert for centuries, or their tombs, where even the humblest carvings tell stories of lives woven into the fabric of trade and tradition. These weren't isolated feats, they were threads in a larger tapestry of innovation, each one proving that ancient civilizations often held wisdom we're only beginning to fully appreciate. Now picture the wider implications. If a nomadic tribe could transform cliffs into a thriving metropolis, what does that reveal about lost technologies or forgotten knowledge buried elsewhere? From the Sahara's buried libraries to the Amazon's hidden earthworks, our planet holds countless untold stories waiting for their own Burkhardt moment. That's the real gift Petra gives us, not just awe at what we found, but hunger for what remains undiscovered. Before you go, here's something to ponder. The next time you face an obstacle, channel the Nabataeans. They saw a barren canyon and envisioned a kingdom. They turned trade routes into empires and scarcity into abundance. If their legacy teaches us anything, it's that human potential thrives where others see only limits. So what's your Petra? What seemingly impossible challenge could become your masterpiece? Drop your answers below. And if this journey through stone and time left you curious, join us as we uncover more civilizations lost to the ages, because history's greatest mysteries are still out there whispering on